A word of warning, this podcast explores graphic and disturbing stories and includes some strong language. It therefore may not be suitable for our young listeners or other folks who may find it disturbing. Hello and welcome to True Crime News, the podcast covering high-profile and under-the-radar cases from across the country every week. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. Our cases this week, a father who intentionally drove his family off a cliff and was charged with attempting to murder his wife and two children, will not face a criminal trial or prison time. In a shocking ruling, the judge has agreed to free the man so he can live with his parents and receive mental health treatment. The man, a doctor himself, claims he was experiencing psychosis at the time of the incident. The victims in this case, his wife and family, all want him to be released, and they do not want him to be tried. So as we always ask here, what would justice look like in this case? Do you agree with the court granting the wishes of the victims in this case? But first, a murder trial with so much violence and hate that it sends the mother of the victim running out of the courtroom as the accused killer takes the stand. The accused killer has admitted his hatred of gays and Jews by his affiliation with a neo-Nazi group. The victim here is a 19-year-old college student who was gay and Jewish. We're recording this on Wednesday, June 26th of 2024. Our guest today is Phillip Hamilton, a criminal defense attorney and managing partner at Hamilton Clark LLP. Phillip is also a legal analyst on several of the cable networks and a dear friend of the show. Phillip, it is always great to see you. How are you?
And I'm so good. It's so good to be here with you. Life is good. Blessed. How are you?
Excellent. I'm good. Thank you very much. I'm so glad that you're here. I always love, I particularly love your commentary and your point of view because while you are a criminal defense attorney and that is what you do, you clearly are able to kind of like separate out a lot of things and say, you know what? This is just not okay. You can defend as best you can, but at the end of the day, sometimes evil does prevail in a lot of these cases. And I know you're very selective about the cases you take yourself. Correct.
Extremely selective. And, it is that lay perspective, that ability to kind of be able to see things all the way through. That certainly isn't mutually exclusive with great criminal defense work. In fact, it's very helpful, I think, to my craft and to my clients. So I love the work that I do. And, of course, I love talking these cases through with you.
Oh, thank you. All right. So our first case is out of Orange County, where justice has indeed been delayed beyond what any family should endure. The parents of a 19-year-old have been waiting 6 years, Phillip, for their day in court because of issues with the accused killer. There were issues with his competency. Then there was a revolving door of attorneys representing him, resetting the clock. And then there was the pandemic. So finally, we are at the point now. This case is in trial, and the defendant in this case has taken the stand for a few days. We don't expect a verdict by the end of this week, although it's possible, but I'm not sure that it's not in the jury's hands as of the recording of this podcast. Now, right. This case is being prosecuted as a hate crime because the accused killer is an admitted neo-Nazi supporter, and the victim here is gay and Jewish. This is the story of one teen killing another teen, two boys who were once schoolmates in high school. And there's this undercurrent here, Phillip, also that is adding to the complication of this case of whether it is a hate crime or not, where the accused clearly, based on his own writings that police found, had words and hatred for gays and Jews, and specifically, wrote himself that he went on these dating apps to try and get someone to then embarrass them and hate them and out them. But then he turns around, his attorney says that he's sexually confused and he himself may be gay and was, when he met up with this other boy, maybe it was to out him and to be hateful, or maybe it was more, I don't know.
As I've read the facts of the case, very unfortunate case, very unfortunate that this young man, had to lose his life really before it even gets started. I think in regards to the defense, a lot of times when I come on to have these conversations with you, we're always talking about cases where the defense has a very uphill battle. And this one isn't any different. And I think anytime you're a defense attorney and you're having to come in conceding that my client committed murder, whichever level of murder it may be, you're already off to a bad start in terms of being able to effectively hope for the best for your client. But I think the best here is that he doesn't get convicted of the first degree murder charge, that they try to play in some kind of emotional distress component, or they're trying to play in, I think at this point, one of those, oh, I blacked out and next thing I knew I was stabbing this man 19 times component. And that's fine, but in terms of a defense, but the problem is that wasn't what was said at the outset. This defendant was running from any responsibility. This defendant was running from any, blameworthiness in terms of his own part, any culpability. And so to now come out and say, well, actually, my client did kill this person, but it wasn't done out of hate, even though, Anna, you just went over, very clearly a lot of the hateful messages that were put out in regards to, the LGBTQ community and, the Jewish people. This is not a good look at all for this particular defendant, I think, on all counts and all charges, but they're trying to play it as best they can.
Yeah. And then for him to take the stand, I was quite surprised here. He has changed physically a lot in these 6 years. And usually you do see that with young people. But his presence in court, for those of you who are listening and can't see the photos that we're going to put up, I mean, I don't say this lightly. He walked in that courtroom looking like Charles Manson. And he reportedly idolizes Charles Manson. Disheveled long hair. He is wearing a jacket, but the hair is all the way forward onto his face. He doesn't hold his head up. He doesn't really answer questions in a timely way. When he took the stand, and he was on the stand for a few days,
right,
the reports were that it was agonizing to listen to, and that it was very difficult for the jury because he would be asked a question and then he would answer maybe 1 to 2 minutes later. Now, his defense attorney and his family is now saying that it is possible that he may be on the spectrum, has autism, has difficulty communicating with people. So that very well could be part of it. Let's not forget there were issues of competency. So I don't know if he's medicated. I don't know what's going on. But I can assure you he is not presenting, I don't think he's doing himself any favors here. I don't know.
No, I mean, I've seen the pictures as well. To your point, if he is idolizing Charles Manson, it certainly sounds like he's going to be following in his footsteps, pretty soon in terms of spending the rest of his life very possibly in prison. Start there. And, I think as regards just how difficult it's been, I get that the defense has to throw the hodgepodge of mental health related issues out there because, again, when you don't have much to work with, sometimes you just got to throw the kitchen sink. And it sounds like that's being, done here. And, Anna, look, we spoke even at the beginning of the show about, I'm certainly not one to say that there's not just pure evil that exists out here. I'm also one to say that a lot of times, though, when we're dealing with these cases, I think we can all agree that this person's certainly not right in the mind, right? Like whatever the, impetus may be for why he's behaving the way that he is. I certainly would think that there's some kind of, disorder from the DSM-5 or something that's driving just really bad behavior and a really, really, really grotesque act that has happened here. So, yeah, of course, the defense is going to play that part out in terms of why it's taking him 30 seconds or a minute to answer questions. But, that definitely cuts against your credibility when you're trying to convince the jury that you didn't act in certain ways, but it's taking you a minute to answer your own attorney's questions, not the prosecution's questions, your own attorneys, whom presumably you worked with before taking the stand and answering these questions. So not, I think, a good look, I think, for this defendant. And, he's facing a lot right now.
Yeah, he is. And the one thing here, though, we cannot, at least I can't, remove the hatred part of this. Whether this is a hate crime or not, the jury will decide this. But he clearly has expressed hatred. And there are a lot of people in this country, in this world, who express hateful things. And they are not mentally ill. They truly hate. And the organization that he affiliated himself with is described, Atomwaffen is described, Philip, is being even worse and more violent than Nazis. Like, how is that even possible? Like, my brain can't even wrap my head around that part of it.
Yeah.
Can't even go there. So, you don't have to be mentally ill to be a hateful person.
Not at all. And I mean, especially with that group, it's my understanding, I think that they're preparing for, the next race war or what have you. And, here you have this kid that's following them. And I think some of the irony here, and I don't know if this is like a part that plays into some of the underlying behavior, but I think certainly isn't helpful for his case. But, some of the insinuations that the defendant himself may be gay, right? And just hasn't come out yet. Or I think his father was, very anti-virulently, not about having a gay child or dealing with gay people. And I think to that end, it sounds like he kind of hates himself, let alone, his former classmate who he ended up killing. So it's just like the fact that you hate yourself is almost tantamount to just a conviction on the hate crime, because it's that hatred for yourself and your own inability to come out, which, has you, stabbing another man who has come out and whose, parents were supportive of his, choice and how he wanted to live his life and who he was as a person. To be stabbed in the face 19 times, it just kind of brings back memories of, what happened with Matthew Shepard and, Wyoming back in 2000, 2001, something like that. Maybe it was 1999. But you just hate to hear that. You hate to hear that.
Yeah, so let's get into the details here. The accused here is Sam Woodward. He is now 26 years old, and he was 20 at the time of the murder. He is charged with killing 19-year-old Blaze Bernstein in January of 2018 while Blaze was home from university and visiting his parents during winter break. The two young men connected on a dating app. Now, here's the question. Was Sam trolling on these sites for an opportunity to harm a gay man, or was he looking to hook up? Or maybe it was both. It is unclear based on his own writings and his actions. So his attorney says that Sam was sexually confused, might be on the spectrum. But again, we have this allegiance to this neo-Nazi group called Atomwaffen. So Sam has taken the stand in this case, and he has admitted, as you said, to stabbing Blaze 19 times. That's one stab for every year of Blaze's life, you know? And he said that they were smoking a joint, that Sam passed out, and when he woke up, he said he saw Blaze holding a phone, his phone, and also that Sam's genitals were exposed, and he freaked out because he thought Blaze was taking a picture of his genitals and was going to out him as gay. And he freaked out, he panicked, and that he killed Blaze. And then, of course, later lied about it, and ultimately they found some forensics. That is what he is saying now, which is a lot different from what he said in the beginning, because this young man had been missing for days, and it was agonizing because nobody knew what happened to him, and his parents were just suffering looking for this young man. So what's interesting is that Sam and Blaze knew each other before the murder. They had attended the Orange County School of the Arts, and the two of them could not have been more different, as you started to point out there, Philip. So Sam grew up in a very conservative Catholic family, claims this was not a family that was supportive of the LGBTQ plus community. On the other hand, Blaze grew up openly gay in a very supportive, progressive Jewish home. And, when we get back, I can't let go of the hate component here, because whether it's a hate crime or not, it is a hateful act.
Right.
Blaze's own grandmother, who is still alive, is a survivor of a concentration camp. And to hear her speak about her murdered grandson, who was killed by a supporter of a neo-Nazi group, after all these decades, is just so frightening to me. She has endured so much, this woman.
Yeah, frightening, I guess heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking.
Oh,
Really want to imagine something like that.
Can you? Oh, so here's the other difference. While Sam had trouble staying in school, Blaze was doing fantastic. He was at an Ivy League university and very popular and just by all accounts, a delightful man. That's why his parents named him Blaze. When he came out in a blaze of glory and is like, this is who you are, my child. So perfectly named and so perfectly loved. So Sam's family says that he's been struggling with autism, which means he has difficulty communicating and with relationships. That all may be true, but that doesn't necessarily make that in no way, not even necessarily, that in no way makes you a killer. So that
all right. It doesn't. And, I think it's just very important to point out here that, like you said a little earlier, their competency issues were explored. The judge in this matter found Sam totally competent to stand trial in this matter. So, one thing with respect to an autism diagnosis, and I certainly can say myself, I know, many people with said diagnosis who are fantastic people who, once the issue was identified and the treatment's there, that has nothing to do with being a killer. That has nothing to do with what happened here. And you can throw that out. But I think the defense needs to be really careful because so many of us know or know people or who are touched in some way, by autism, to kind of be throwing that out as a maybe a little blanketed excuse or something like that. That's a dangerous territory to walk because it's kind of insulting.
I agree. It really upsets me. It is not fair. We have so many people who, as you said, are successful, very high functioning, and are managing and just really thriving,
loving.
And even when we speak about mental illness, so many forms of mental illness that so many millions struggle with, right. that does not make you a criminal. And I'm getting sick and tired of people just throwing that out there as the reason that they behaved badly and took another life, when really that's not the reason. In some cases, yes, you have some people who are suffering such debilitating mental illness and psychosis and paranoia. That is a whole different subset.
I think we'll be talking about that a little later today.
Yes, we will.
So, that'll be a perfect kind of counterpoint, in terms of balancing what we're discussing right now. But I think in this case, I'm not really seeing the viable connection.
No. Now, before Blaze's murder, the two had connected the summer before. In June of 2017, Sam and Blaze connected on the dating app Tinder. Here's what's so interesting. When they connected, Sam freaked out and told Blaze, "Don't you dare tell anyone." And from the perspective of Blaze's friends, they said Blaze was like, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe who I connected with," because everyone remembers Sam. Right. So that couldn't be a more typical summer experience among teens, right? So there's everything about it, right? And it didn't have to go and end the way that it did. So the two then connected again during the winter holidays. And it's this time that the conversation moved from the dating app to Snapchat, which of course Sam preferred because the conversations disappear. But there was a map in there that made it possible for authorities to later figure out, maybe at least narrow down the area as to where Blaze was last seen alive. So on January 2nd of 2018, Sam agreed to pick up Blaze at his house, and then the two drove to Lake Forest Hobby Lobby to catch up. Then they drove to Borrego Park, arriving at the park about midnight, and that's the last time that Blaze was seen alive. On January 3rd, Blaze's parents finally realized he's missing. They thought he had been home all night, and he had a dentist appointment the next morning, and his mother's waiting for him, and he doesn't show up. And then when they knock and open, their adult teenage sons, he's a young adult, he's in college, they realize he never came home, and everyone obviously got very concerned, and the search began. It became a national story, and police interviewed Sam, and he said, "Yes, I went to the park with Blaze. I left him there. He went to meet up with someone else." He admitted he was in the area, but denied anything else, right? He didn't know anything else. Police later say that they found a folding knife in Sam's house. that they believe was the murder weapon. They found some of Blaze's blood in the vehicle that Sam drove them to the park with. So clearly not coming forward. And eventually he is arrested. And when he's arrested and they go through his cell phone and they go through all of this, that's when they find the rest of this young man's story, the hateful part of his life. And he has actively been seeking young gay men to harm them and to say hateful things once he gets them, to connect on the app or in other forms. And what's also interesting is they also, of course, found some gay pornography. So was he consuming it? Was it research for his hateful actions? I have no idea.
Yeah, and did you also read, Anna, just even, preparing to kind of have this discussion with you today, but I think, Sam himself had sent out some nudes of himself
Yes.
to, I think, other men.
Yes, to another classmate of theirs, I believe in high school. One of the classmates said, it was really strange that Sam sent me pictures of himself. And I've listened to several of their former classmates be interviewed over the years, and several of them have said, we always thought that it was possible that maybe Sam really was gay and closeted. But of course, who's going to know? And that's, Sam's private matter, unless it all goes down to explaining what was really going on here. Also, what did you think of his explanation when police said that Sam had, when they talked to him, had visible cuts and scratches and abrasions on his hands himself, and that his fingernails had been caked with dirt. And his explanation was that he was a member of a fight club.
Like some Brad Pitt 1999 style, really lame excuse that, when you discuss how I think difficult the trial has been for people in his testimony, we come to find out why there was a lot of that dirt that was underneath his fingernails, because he was literally digging a grave with his hands. And I think Blaze's mother had to actually walk out of the courtroom just hearing about how this evil person is literally, burying your child that he just killed, stabbed 19 times, with their own hands. So, his credibility is just shot from the outset. And I think what's probably going to happen is the jurors are just going to be looking at everything objectively. And the judge let a lot of, what you noted was in Sam's phone into the litigation, into the trial. So, the jurors are going to know about all of the hateful rhetoric, potentially the self-hate, but certainly the elements are going to be there for the jury, I think, easily to find the hate crime component to all of this.
The other thing that I found fascinating that, again, goes toward the hate component here is that police said that Sam, had been wearing a mask that was very supportive of Atomwaffen and is something that is a mask that he's been photographed wearing with his fellow haters and supporters of that. And there was some of Blaze's blood on this mask. So my question would be, okay, I don't know what, if anything, we can believe. And if I were Blaze's mother, I don't think I could have sat there and listened to all of this. But so he tells us, I just woke up. I thought I was going to be outed. So did he have his hateful mask on when he was killing Blaze? I don't know. Was that part of it?
Yeah. I mean, for the blood to be there, I know, just to somewhat clear the record, there's haters everywhere, Yeah. You have haters at times.
Yes.
This is beyond that. I mean, this is just flat out racism. These are racist, right? And you're wearing this, racist, hateful mask potentially. I mean, to your point, I don't know why there would be blood on there, but, God forbid you're sitting there killing this man with kind of the mark of Hitler. And like we said, potentially even a level above in terms of some of the things that this group is talking about doing, here in this country, over the course of, let's just say sometime soon. I just, I'm like you. It's difficult to even imagine.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. And, these diaries that Samuel kept were obviously very disturbing. But what he did was he was creating profiles on these dating and gay websites, then luring these men into these exchanges, and then he would berate and insult them, right? So he was definitely, from my perspective, hunting. And I think he had used that word at some point. So 6 years later, finally, I cannot imagine waiting 6 years for your day in court. April of 2024, Sam's defense team concedes, yes, he had a hand in Blaze's death. However, this was not a hate crime. This was not a hate crime, and it was not premeditated. He took the stand recently in June. He's was on the stand for a few days, and through those days of testimony, he told his version of events, which again, I don't know what to believe. I really don't. I think there's some truth in there somewhere, but I honestly don't know. And this is what Sam said. He said he woke up and that Blaze was telling him, I got you. And that he was going to out Sam for being a hypocrite. And that is when Sam panicked. And then he said everything was a blur and that he was just scared. And then he said, quote, push came to shove. I couldn't control myself. I lost it. I didn't even know what to think. I was disgusted. I was enraged. What exactly were you disgusted and enraged by?
Right.
I don't. So the trial is ongoing, and he's facing the possibility of life without parole if he's convicted on the hate crime. And my question to you is, why did this thing even bother to go to trial? Like, the reason I ask that is based on, he says he did it, right? He says he did it, and his reason is because he was afraid he was going to be outed. So that's why go there? Because you're gonna serve some time.
No, you're going to serve some time, but maybe that therein is the point. Like, you and I weren't there if there were any plea negotiations. So, I don't know if any conversations have been had, but let's presume this. If I ever had to go to trial on a case like this, it would be because my client's essentially backed into a corner where the risk of losing at trial isn't really that much worse than what's on the table as a plea offer anyway, right? So it's like if they're not making any kind of offer that's really short of life, well, then you're kind of at a point where then you just say like, okay, my client will do life, but the jury's going to have to give it to them. And you're going to have to go out there and prove your case and hope you can get every piece of evidence in, hope that the judge doesn't keep certain things out, right? That's the only thing that I can think of. And, to the extent that if he does not win this trial and you're looking at, life without parole, they might just be looking for some kind of daylight at the end of the tunnel, right? Like maybe, you end up getting a life sentence, but there's some possibility 25, 30, 40 years in that you could potentially get out. And if that, carrot is dangling, 50 years down the line, maybe it's something that kind of drives you to go to trial, even though, to our point, you're going in and saying, I did it. I just didn't do everything that they're saying that I did that should get me like no opportunity to ever be released. Maybe it's not first degree murder, it's second degree. And, if we can get rid of the hate crime enhancements, maybe I have a chance to see daylight outside of bars again at some point in my life. That's why you would do it. Outside of that, then yeah, to your point, just from a lay perspective, it doesn't make much sense. But legally, I guess I could see why.
I just feel if you are going to put that much hate into this world and actively go out to hurt people, so be it. So will be your punishment.
Deal with the consequences.
Exactly, of your own actions. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. When we do get a verdict and a sentence, we will update everyone. You hear us talk about all sorts of crime here on True Crime News, and you know that the world can be a dangerous and unpredictable place. With every case that I've covered, I've learned one thing, that your best line of defense is vigilance and preparation. That's why I recommend Simply Safe Home Security, advanced home security that puts you first. Summer is officially here, which means it is prime time for vacations and weekend getaways. While relaxing, it can mean being away from your home for several hours or even days. As I get ready to unwind for summer vacation, I feel comfortable knowing my house is guarded by Simply Safe. It is one less thing for me to worry about, making my time away even more relaxing. There are a lot of security systems out there, but Simply Safe is easy to use, it's cost effective, and it works. Named Best Home Security System of 2024 for 5 years running by U.S. News and World Report, Simply Safe can protect your whole home. Simply Safe offers advanced home security and 24/7 monitoring that is accessible to all with upfront costs and monitoring plans for less than $1 a day. Plus, there are no long-term contracts. You can cancel anytime, penalty-free. By partnering with Simply Safe, I've finally gotten real peace of mind, and I want you to have it too. Get an exclusive 20% off any new Simply Safe system when you sign up for Fast Protect monitoring. Just visit simplysafe.com/truecrime. That's simplysafe.com/truecrime. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Our next case is also out of California, from the Bay Area, where a father who intentionally drove his car off a cliff with his wife and his 2 children inside has been spared a criminal trial and prison time. It is a case that we've been covering on the podcast, and now we have this really surprising and I would say controversial update. We're talking about Dharmesh Patel, who's 43, and he has been granted a 2-year mental health diversion after previously being charged with 3 counts of attempted murder. Dharmesh crashed his Tesla off this dangerous stretch of coastal highway in Northern California called Devil's Slide. He was in the car with his wife, their 7-year-old daughter, 4-year-old son. Miraculously, they all survived this crash, which is really unbelievable when you look at the video, where they had to use helicopters and baskets, to get them out of the crash site and to get help. And there in real time, the wife is telling the paramedics, she's telling them, she's like, he intentionally drove off the cliff. He tried to kill us. So this is not disputed here. And then we later find out he's been having all sorts of very severe psychosis and condition. And we're going to get into the details of this. But my question to you is, I was surprised with the judge's ruling that, but here's the thing, Philip. I always say, what would justice look like? And that I do believe survivors and victims have a right to voice what it is that they believe justice would be to them. And this family has voiced that justice to them is to release the father and husband to get him mental health treatment. What do you think?
Well, it's twofold in terms of my thoughts. I guess on one end, it's always, there's a reason why it's always the state of California versus such and such, or the people of New York versus such and such, because, as a society is bigger than just, the individual victim or victims, right? Like these are, rules, laws, regulations that we as a society live by that, if they're violated, the interest of all of us as a state have to be taken into account a little bit more so than the family. So I think probably what made the judge's decision hard wasn't even so much that, the family has come to a point where they want him to, be able to come home and, clearly not be in prison for a long time. But, certainly the court would have to consider the safety of the rest of the community, right? Because on this particular instance, which if we're going to accept was a, major, severe depressive episode, okay, you tried to drive your family off the cliff. Anna, you're out there in California. I've made that drive up the coast from like LA to San Francisco, and just always kind of thinking about when I'm going north and looking over those cliffs sometimes that are on your left side. If that car went off one of those, I don't even know how we're having a discussion about all of them being alive. It was my understanding the kids only had kind of minor bruising. And I'm just like, grace of God, clearly, if my mind serves me right, making that drive. But all I'm saying is like, okay, on that instance, you attempted to hurt your family. The court really would have to give considerations to making sure that he's getting the proper treatment, that the diversion program is something that essentially can keep all of us safe. That the next time
Yes.
it's not going to be we're all at some outing or some concert and he's pile driving through all of us as we're attempting to live our lives. So yeah, surprising, I guess, in the sense that the court came out on the side of I'm going to take the risk that if you end up hurting your family or all of us again, that you getting the proper treatment is what will curtail something like that from ever happening again. But Anna, we don't know. We don't know. So I guess maybe that's where the weight of what the family has to say about this man can maybe kind of play into the court's ear, that he's never been in trouble before, that we've never seen anything like this before. But certainly this man is going to have to, get the correct treatment and show that he's been treated, show that he's in a position to where these kinds of episodes aren't causing this type of conduct and behavior, because otherwise, I mean, how safe are any of us?
I don't know. And the prosecutors on the case said that was their problem. They weren't sure how safe any of us were going to be. And their problem with this solution was that at the time of his episode, that he very cleverly and in a high functioning manner would try to cover and suppress some of what was going on as to not, let people know what he was really thinking and feeling with his paranoia and all these other things. I mean, he stated that the reason he drove off the cliff was because he had to save his children from being sex trafficked, which they were under no threat of. So clearly he's not thinking straight. But at the time, he was able to cover up some of the fact that he wasn't thinking straight. He had enough faculties to be able to do that. And so when we're dealing with a very high functioning, intelligent human being,
he's a doctor, right?
A doctor, yes. Then this is my question, which the prosecution, clearly told the judge that that's what they were worried about. That this is someone who was able to function and cover up. So are we going to also, be bringing our representative to therapy that everything is fine when behind the facade we're falling apart? I don't know, but it's a really good point.
I don't even have an answer to that one. When I can think back over the course of my career, like dealing with one particular case here on the Upper West Side, where I was dealing with a client that had like a major depressive order and inadvertently in a suicide attempt blew up his brownstone right on West 94th. I mean, I can discuss it's a matter of public record, but getting the court, who interestingly enough, the judge was Judge Merchan, who just tried President Trump's case here in New York, but he also deals a lot with like mental health court in New York State Supreme Criminal Term. And, just trying to get the court to a place of understanding a lot of like the mental faculties that were going on behind that decision. And that even though he put a lot of the community at risk, I'm talking about my client in terms of his conduct at that end, that there are these times where like these major depressive episodes can drive conduct like this, that on the other side of the episode, like, and essentially in my case, it was when the explosion occurred, there was this part of him that kind of like came out of it and was like, oh my God, like, what have I done? Right. And so when I think about the cover up component, or at least, what we kind of hear to be as much in this case that we're discussing now, what I'm trying to say is that it's not necessarily mutually exclusive, that he could have actually had that psychosis, that major depressive episode that led to the conduct, kind of came out of it. Oh my God, like, what have I done, or what am I about to do? These things aren't just linear. They're not black and white. When we're dealing with issues of mental health that are at this level, that's where you have to have more of an open mind. You kind of have to be a little bit more of an expert to understand these things. And my presumption is the judge did read a lot of forensic reports and did have a better understanding of his mental psyche than even you and I have right now, just talking about this at this level. That, my hope would just be that there again was enough confidence based on what had been submitted in those reports to believe that he could be treated, and that hopefully this won't happen again.
Right. Hopefully. So Dharmesh Patel lived in Pasadena and was a physician at Providence Holy Cross Medical Center. Neighbors loved him. Everybody loved him. The staff, patients. I mean, just a really likable, smart man. And on January 2nd of 2023, the car plunged 250 feet down and it flipped multiple times. And I don't know how, but it landed on its tires. Again, when you look at the video, it is unbelievable that anyone walked away from this. But, again, and the helicopters and being put in baskets and the trauma of it, for me, the victims here obviously are clearly the wife and the children. And there is a protective order which stands even when he eventually is released into this mental health diversion program, which means he has to stay away from his wife and children, which I think is a good idea.
I'm sure, you haven't necessarily discussed it or thought, but I'm sure Child Protective Services is involved as
Yes.
well. A whole other component, there that's going to make it difficult for him to just reunite with his family. But
Exactly. And, so we have to think about these children. They experienced an incredibly traumatic event where their father tried to kill them because that was the intent. That is not disputed. And they survived, and now he's out again. Like, how do you help these children process this?
A lot of therapy.
Yeah.
We know that they're going to need. You think about the PTSD from something like that.
Oh.
The mother, I think, had severe spinal injury, so clearly, she's going to be physically debilitated for the rest of their lives, and then the resentment you have towards your father, but then you still love your father. I don't know, and you and I always end up, both of us as parents, talking about these cases where people cause harm to their kids or attempt to cause harm to their kids. I don't even like thinking about it, let alone talking about it. I don't know how they're going to move forward, but certainly it's not going to be without a lot of love and professional help.
Right. And again, the judge did hear the family. They presented 47 letters of support on who he is and who is his best of the best of him when he is well. So, there is, and the evidence is clear, not only from what the wife said, but when you look at the surveillance video and any security footage, the brakes were never slammed on. This was an acceleration and a deep dive. There's no question about what happened here. So, he was arrested for willfully and deliberately trying to kill his wife and children. And he was charged with those 3 felony counts with enhancements also for domestic violence and causing great bodily harm. Now, here's what's interesting. He initially denied the premeditation, claiming it was an accident. Then he finally admitted that he was having hallucinations and psychosis in the days before the accident, again, worried that his children were going to be sold as sex slaves, and that he also started hearing footsteps in his home and was carrying around a knife for days. So whether the family saw him carrying around the knife for days, that's the part I don't know. Was he able to contain and hide what was really going on? And there's also a disagreement in his diagnosis. The prosecutors are saying that he suffered a schizophrenic type disorder that would make this proposed diversion plan ineffective.
Yeah.
Right? But the defense says no, the diagnosis is severe depressive episode. So it's the conflicting experts on what exactly he is suffering from. And again, the wife testified, the family was all there, the extended family in the courtroom. So let's talk about this diversion program and how this is going to work. And then I think then you all can jump in and tell us whether you think this is justice or not. So this law, it's called the Mental Health Diversion Program of California, was, it's meant to try and help those. Obviously, I would say those of a nonviolent offense, but I think this is a very violent offense. Yeah, this it's attempted murder.
Nothing to say.
Nothing to say. So on June 24th, the judge has approved this diversion plan. Okay, so here's how it's going to work. He's still behind bars. He's going to be released soon. he's going to be released into the custody of his parents who live in Northern California, and that he has to live in his parents' home, wear a GPS monitor, undergo testing twice weekly to make sure that he's taking his meds.
Right.
And he has to show up in court. He has to abstain from drugs, alcohol, surrender his passport and his driver's license. Hello. And that he will have a 2-month intensive outpatient treatment with weekly therapy sessions. And obviously he will never be allowed to practice medicine again. And he is not permitted contact with his wife or children. Here's my question with this. I wonder if maybe this is just my opinion, might feel just a tad safer if I knew that he was going into a treatment facility as opposed to his parents, who I presume if he's 40 are probably at least 60.
Mm-hmm.
Are they in a position and qualified to contain this man if something should happen?
Yeah, I don't know. We don't know his parents. And, I guess also what I would add to that is like whether we did or didn't, I mean, the GPS monitoring, all of that stuff. Okay, I know where you are, but for the, 20 seconds it may take for you to leave the house in a car and do something else dangerous to people, that's exactly where I get where your fear's coming from, right? And, if he were in a facility that had a bit more, let's just say like security and
yes,
a bit more oversight, it could give like a little bit more peace of mind. And certainly you and I kind of already have the understanding, at least we can, at a surface level, of why the judge may have permitted this. So,
correct.
And I hear you, but I guess what I would have to hope, give the benefit of the doubt again to the judge, me and you aren't reading those forensic evaluations. We're not reading those reports. And maybe there was enough in there that like really it did say that, for instance, if this person is taking lithium, if this person is now on a medicine, if they're on a course of treatment that couldn't have been found before all this happened, that now has been diagnosed. And as long as they stay on this course of treatment, then we don't have to worry about him running out of his parents' house, getting in the car and putting all of us in danger. That's the benefit of the doubt I would hope to be able to give to the report, only because, again, I've been through this with a client that I watched actually, like after that major depressive episode, work his way, like after the proper diagnoses and the proper treatment was given, work his way back to a very functional part of society, of course, with a lot of his family's love and support or what have you. So I've seen it. And I would just hope that this case would be more akin to that than certainly anything bad happening again,
Yeah. And one thing, and this is just the human side, this isn't part of the crime discussion, but I think to myself, once he, let's say, reestablishes a balance and clarity and is feeling well, then he has to live with the fact, oh my God.
Tried to kill my kids.
I tried to kill my children.
And my wife.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know how you process that, even if you are as healthy as possible. So how then does a person who's not healthy process something so dark and so horrible? Oof.
I don't know. And we don't know what his relationship was like with the kids, like if they were even close, and if they were, now the kids may never want to deal with him again.
I don't blame the kids. I mean, I don't blame them. They're probably frightened of him and they probably do miss him. And I do. The wonderful thing about this family, this extended family that has rallied around him, shown up. I mean, I hope he realizes, he is one fortunate man. He is deeply loved by an extended family and community that is standing up for him. So I hope he realizes that and the healing power of that.
Yeah, and love potentially by a higher power, because again, that 250 feet, landing on all four tires, being alive right now. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he's certainly got a lot of soul searching to do, and it's going to be even more than therapy to get him through there. He's going to need some grace and help from above. Yeah. So he will appear in court again very soon on July 1st, and that's when all of the details of the release will be determined, but this is the plan so far. So I guess On a wing and a prayer, we hope this works. It is time for our comment section. These are the crime cases you all are talking about on social media, and here's our producer, Will Updike. Hey, Will, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
Good.
It's been a while. I missed you.
Oh my gosh, I know. I've been off, and then I was sick last week, and I want to thank Josh and Lewis for filling in for me, and Philip, apologize to you again. We were scheduled to do this last week, but I was so sick, so
I'm just
here
glad
we
you
are.
We're just glad to have you back.
Thank you.
And Philip, great to see you again. Always love my lawyers from New York popping in.
I know. I love. We call you the guys from New York.
We're here for you guys. We're here. Hey, yo, call away.
So this week we have a case where doing it for the content goes wrong. This case comes out of San Bernardino, California, where officials arrested a 24-year-old YouTuber after he allegedly made a video depicting fireworks shot from a helicopter at a speeding Lamborghini in a rural San Bernardino County. This incident reportedly dates kind of a while back. So this goes back to July 4th of last year. I guess you can probably see the fireworks connection, but Sukmin Choi, who also goes by Alex Choi on YouTube, posted a video to his channel called, aptly titled, "Destroying a Lamborghini with Fireworks."
What a niche.
Yeah. So in this video, there's two women flying a helicopter near the ground. They're shooting fireworks towards this sports car after Choi kind of comically presses like a fire missiles button. Now, because of this, the video has been taken down. There's some clips that are still surfacing around. So I'll show it for the viewers. But for the listeners, you can kind of imagine there's a helicopter shooting fireworks at a Lamborghini. It's pretty crazy. It's out there. It's out there in the desert. There doesn't really seem to be a lot of people around, but prosecutors allege that Choi here didn't have the required permits to film fireworks on a helicopter. Like, this is kind of, heavy stuff at the end of the day. You have an aircraft, which involves federal guidelines and stuff. You got fireworks going on. And investigators also believe that Choi bought the fireworks in Nevada because they're illegal in California. So kind of some evidence here that could end up being a problem if this goes to trial is that Choi filmed sort of a behind the scenes look at how he shot part of the video. He explains sort of coordinating the shoot and directing it. And he, thanks the camera company for being part of this. And he says that there was almost even a mishap on set because he forgot to tell them how to use a torch. So it doesn't seem like there was all these safe line, all the guidelines and stuff sort of being followed, which could be a real issue. So they've been combing through this evidence. Like I said, it seems like, he kind of didn't set himself up for the best defense in this scenario. But he was arrested a couple weeks ago on June 5th. And he's been charged with one count of causing the placement of an explosive or incendiary device on an aircraft. Not familiar with that one. However, he would face a maximum sentence of 10 years in federal prison if convicted.
Okay, but there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack here.
There's a lot to unpack here.
But, so whose Lamborghini is this? Because that's kind of like an expensive thing. Was it a random Lamborghini or was it his? And the owner said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead."
I'm guessing it was either his or he had permission. I mean, he is a large YouTuber. Some of these, they make a lot of money. And it's become this thing where for all the big YouTube personalities, it's just getting to be a crazier and crazier thing.
Yes, of course.
I'm sure you're familiar with Mr. Beast, who's keeping people ages 0 from 100 in cages to see how long they can do it, and they're being compensated and all this stuff. But at a certain point, it's somebody needs to be overseeing, I think, some of this just for safety. And I don't think that these people obviously had any sort of malice in mind. But if something had gone wrong with these fireworks on a helicopter, things could have gone very, very wrong, catastrophically wrong.
Well, look at what we're looking at, the movie set where Alec Baldwin is still, facing charges there. And that's with a situation in which you supposedly have experts, safety experts.
Supposed to.
Right? Checks, double checks that there won't be real bullets in the guns that you're firing on the movie set. that's worst case scenario. And that's under alleged supervision. This, I guess, I don't know, Philip, I feel it almost has a little bit like our last case. It's like, well, with the car over the cliff, well, nobody died. It's, that somehow that's part of the defense in all of this.
Yeah, like, did you die, right? Like sometimes people will say colloquially, but did you die? And it's like, no, but somebody will if this is the new norm. Everybody just doing these kinds of things for likes. And it's like this world is turning into like this combo Jackass plus Gladiator. That's what all YouTubers are like becoming now. And it's a dangerous world with which we're residing just for people to get these likes, Well, I mean, like going to that, Yolanda S. said he did the same thing movie production companies do, which Anna, you kind of touched on. I mean, I could see both sides of it, but like at the end of the day, there's at least the idea that the movie like production companies or the industry, like there are some safeguards in place. And if someone, is injured, that there's this greater accountability. I guess my question is, what's that? Ideally.
Yeah, ideally, right? I guess my thing is like, Philip, I don't know a lot about like federal sentencing or anything, but what do you think about 10 years in this? I mean, that nobody did die. Is that excessive? Is there, do you think that he can plead out? Is this something that you think would go to trial?
I mean, if the feds were to come in on this, I mean, of course, everything depends on like what his guidelines would say in terms of where he falls between that 0 and 10. I don't see any judge giving him 10 years. I don't see any appellate court upholding that. But could somebody put him in for like a year and a day just to send a message that as a society,
that's possible.
We're not doing this? Like, that wouldn't be a surprise. And I don't think it would be appealable. So we'll see.
Yeah, Call Me Kobe. They said, I hope he's doing community service, which I don't know. I agree. It's a really dangerous thing. There was also recently that thing where the guy, they found that he allegedly intentionally crashed the airplane and like pretended that it like broke down and he had to do an emergency escape maneuver. And he like allegedly just crashed it on purpose to make this YouTube video. So yeah, I don't know how to send the message, but it is a little kind of scary.
Somebody's going to get hurt. Like
someone's going to lose an eye, as I always say. Right, this thing our mothers have said to us for decades. Somebody's going to lose an eye.
Right.
Miss Lonnie, people too. Miss Lonnie's worried about people too. She said, "This is why we have stupid warnings on common sense things." Do you mean shooting fireworks from a helicopter at vehicles below is not a safe thing to do? I didn't know. There's a lot of warnings on fireworks. I don't know if they get this specific, but you should kind of know better. You should kind of know better. But yeah, some people are just kind of overwhelmed by the content thing. Unlisted and Twisted said that the moment art became content, I started losing hope in putting out media on this platform, which for all our YouTube people, you won't see any of that here, unfortunately. We won't shoot any fireworks at Lamborghinis, but
we'll get the permits first before we do it. I mean, we'll
get the permits first. I mean, that's
not saying we won't do it, but we will have the permits.
I advise you guys not to do it. Don't do it.
I'm going to close this one out on a one from Zorro W. They said can't do anything fun in this country anymore, which
it's up
for debate. But that is going to do it for this week's comment section. Thank you, everybody. You can do that over on our YouTube community page. Just wanted to update everybody. Anna, you too. Our handles are now there. We're set all across all social medias. Our digital media footprint is all at My True Crime News. You can find us there on Instagram, on X, on Facebook, TikTok. Wherever you go, it's going to be at My True Crime News. So just simplifying it, making it a little bit more streamlined. It's kind of been a million names for the last few years. So glad to have it all under one umbrella.
Yes, and all of this is in preparation for our new crime show that launches in the fall, True Crime News. And, you all have been complaining, there's not enough videos on this program. Well, of course, this is a podcast, people. As I always remind them, it's like, it's a podcast. It's different than the rest of the channel. But yes, that means new videos are coming your way. You've been asking for it. It's finally going to happen.
You're welcome. It's all coming together.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Bye, Will.
Bye. I'll see you next week.
Philip, it is always such a pleasure having you on the program. What are you up to these days? You're always so busy. I love your Instagram. You know, I follow you, and I just, you're running from one horrible jail to another to meet with your clients, in between going to really swanky events. Mm-hmm. You live quite a life there.
Yeah, New York is eventful. And if I'm not doing that, as of recent, just a lot of the coverage with, our former president's trial, there's just like so much going on in this city legally that it keeps you busy. And, I've been busy, but I love watching you as well, and just the growth of the program, and, hearing about the new, things we have coming for you for the fall and everything like that, your family. Just it's a pleasure to know you, man. To work with
thank you. Thank you. Where can people find you and your law firm?
So you can find me across handles at ESQ Hamilton. It's ESQ Hamilton. Of course, just type in my name and I'll pop up. And of course, our firm right here on Wall Street, Hamilton Clark LLP. If you're in New York, don't be a stranger. And
say hi to Lance and Sean for us.
Certainly will.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah, I know you too. In fact, I do believe I recently saw some of you on a fancy little boat somewhere, either in the Hamptons or the Long Island Sound or something fancy.
And the next time you're in New York, we'll definitely hit the Sound.
I love it. I love your life. It's fabulous. And I love your perspective. Always really grounded. Well, you can find me at Ana G News on all social media platforms. You can find this episode and all our episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, True Crime News. That's right. We changed the name recently. Sign up to receive our newsletter at truecrimenews.com. Remember, social media handle is now My True Crime News, which I think is kind of fun. It is yours. So this is True Crime News, the podcast. I'm your host, Ana Garcia. Until next week, as we always say, don't do crime.